There is a reason some men carry something into a room that others do not. You have felt it before, even if you never had words for it. A man stands up to pray, and the air seems to change. Another man says all the right words, in the right order, and nothing moves. Same Bible, same God, same building, and yet one of them has clearly been somewhere the other has never been. Tonight we are going to talk about that somewhere. Because it is real, it has an address, and almost no one alive is willing to go there. It is not a stage. It is not a conference. It is not a louder worship set or a better strategy. It is a small, hidden, unlit place. And what happens there, in secret, quietly decides everything that ever happens in the light. Be honest with yourself for a moment. Most of us have learned to pray on the move. We pray in the car, between two meetings, with one eye on the phone. We pray in crowds, out loud, when someone is listening and it costs us nothing. We have somehow become fluent in praying in public and complete strangers to praying in secret. We can talk about prayer for an hour. We can stream 100 sermons about prayer, and still go months without once being truly alone with God, with the door shut, with nothing to gain and no one to impress. That is the real crisis of our generation. It is not that we stopped believing in prayer. It is that we stopped being willing to pay for it. The man whose teaching carries this message understood that better than almost anyone who ever lived. E.M. Bounds was a preacher and a writer who poured the last long years of his life into one single conviction, that the power of God does not travel through methods or machinery, but through men who have learned to meet him alone. He rose hours before the sun to pray while the world was still asleep, and he spent himself on his knees for a church he knew he would never live to see. Based on the teachings of E.M. Bounds, we made this video, and we believe it can be an instrument God uses to speak to you tonight. We did not make this to entertain you. We made it to call you back into the one room almost no one is willing to enter. And before we step inside, wherever you are watching from tonight, we are honestly glad you are here. If you are listening from Dallas, from Nashville, from a cold morning in Charlotte, from a quiet kitchen in Manchester, from London long after midnight, from a truck cab parked in the middle of nowhere, this message is for you, by name. So if you can, stop what you are doing. Put the phone face down. Let the next half hour be your secret place. And if something in you is already tired of starting and stopping, tired of praying hard for 3 days and quitting on the 4th, tired of wanting a real prayer life and never quite managing to build one, then do one thing before we go a single step further. Look at the very first comment pinned right under this video and open that link now, not later. Now, before the noise of your day pulls you away again like it has 100 times before. That link is the War Room Manual. 30 days of spiritual strategy that take you by the hand, one day at a time, straight into the secret place we are about to talk about, with a daily plan, an audio guide to walk beside you, and a journal to keep you honest when no one else is watching. Do not wait until the end, and let this moment slip past you the way so many good intentions already have. Open it now, keep it ready, and then come back and hear the rest. Because knowing about the secret place will never change your life. Building it will.
There is a kind of man whose prayers seem to reach the very throne of God, and a kind of man whose prayers seem to reach no higher than the ceiling of the room he is standing in. And the strange thing, the thing that should stop you where you stand, is that the difference between them is almost never talent. It is almost never intelligence or eloquence, or how much of the Bible they have memorized, or how naturally gifted they are in front of a crowd. Two men can preach the same truth from the same page, and one of them shakes something loose in eternity, while the other one just makes a pleasant sound. Two men can pray the same words over the same sick child, and one prayer seems to bend the sky and the other seems to bounce off of it. The difference is a secret. It is a secret so old, so simple and so costly that most people, the moment they truly understand it, quietly decide they would rather not pay it. And then they spend the rest of their lives wondering why heaven feels so far away, why God seems so silent, why their faith has the shape of power, but none of the current running through it. The secret is a place, not a building made of stone, not a sanctuary with a name carved over the door. It is a place in the dark, a place with no audience, a hidden place where a man goes to be alone with God and comes back somehow different than he went in. Jesus himself named it. He called it the closet, the inner room. And he said that when you pray, you should go into that room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Read that slowly, because we skip past it too fast. Not the Father who is seen, the Father who is unseen. The whole transaction, the real one, the one that changes a man, happens in a place no camera can reach, no crowd can applaud, and no one but God will ever witness. And that, precisely that, is why almost no one goes there. We have been trained to need witnesses, and God has hidden the greatest power in the universe behind a shut door where there are none. The men who did the most for God in the entire history of the world were made in that place. They were not made on platforms. They were not made by their gifts. They were made on their faces, in the dark, hours before anyone knew their names or ever would. Bounds gave his life to studying these men, tracing the river of their public power back and back until he reached the spring, and he found the very same thing every single time. The spring was always hidden. The power that people saw in the daylight was always, without exception, the overflow of something that had happened in private, on the knees, in a room no one else ever entered. He said it as plainly as it can be said. The men who have done the most for God have been early on their knees. Not the most naturally gifted men, not the best educated men, the early risers, the ones who learned to seek God before the world could get its hands on them and fill them with itself. Now hear what that costs, because this is the exact point where almost everyone turns back. The secret place costs you time, and not the time you had left over anyway. It costs you the best time, the first time, the very time the rest of your life is fighting hardest to steal from you. It costs you the dawn. It costs you sleep. It costs you the warm bed and the extra hour and the comfortable, reasonable, respectable rhythm of a life that never once inconveniences itself for God. It costs you solitude, which our entire world is now engineered to prevent, because there is always one more thing to watch, one more notification, one more voice. You can pour into the silence so that you never have to actually sit inside it. And most of all, it costs you the applause, because nothing that happens in the secret place will ever be seen by anyone. There are no numbers there. No one likes it. No one shares it. No one claps. No one even knows you were there. The entire price of the secret place, underneath all the other prices, is the price of being unseen. And you need to understand how uniquely heavy that price has become for people living right now, in this moment, because it may be the hardest price your generation has ever been asked to pay. We are the first people in history who can be watched all day long. We have built entire lives around being seen. Every meal, every thought, every small victory offered up to an audience for a little hit of being noticed. We have quietly come to believe that a thing does not fully count unless someone witnessed it. And into that exact sickness God says, "Come and meet me where no one will ever see. Come and pour out your soul in a room where there is no audience, no feedback, no proof it even happened." For a heart addicted to being watched, that is not a small ask. It feels at first almost pointless. Why do the deepest, most costly thing you will ever do and let no one know? And the answer is that this is the whole test. God is not hiding the secret place to make it hard for the sake of hardness. He is hiding it because only a man who will seek him with no one watching is a man who actually wants him, and not the reputation of being close to him. The secret place burns away the audience until all that is left is you and God, and it turns out that was the only thing that was ever real. But we did not pay that price. We made a trade instead, and it was a terrible trade, and most of us made it without ever noticing the moment it happened. We traded the secret place for activity. We traded communion for consumption. We filled our lives so full of information about God that we stopped feeling the absence of God himself. Think about it honestly. You can wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, you can already be holding a small glowing device that will pour worship music, Bible verses, sermon clips, devotional thoughts, Christian news, and the encouraging words of 10,000 strangers straight into your mind. You can spend your entire day soaked to the skin in the things of God and never once actually be alone with him. You can be religiously busy and spiritually starving at the very same time and never notice the contradiction because the busyness feels like devotion. You can know everything there is to know about the King and never once have stood in the throne room. That is the disease of our age, and it does not feel like a disease because it does not feel empty. It feels productive. It feels informed. It feels holy. It just does not feel like him, and slowly, quietly, we forget what he even felt like in the first place, because there is a world of difference between talking about God and being with God, and we have almost entirely lost it. You can spend an hour discussing a person and never speak a word to them. You can become an expert on someone you have never actually met. A man can study the letters of a wife he abandoned and know every fact about her, and still be a stranger to her, still be alone. And that is what has happened to us with God. We have his letters memorized and his presence forgotten. We can debate his attributes and not recognize his voice. And here is the thing no amount of study can ever replace. God is not a subject to be mastered. He is a person to be known. And you do not come to know a person by reading about them. You come to know them by being with them in the quiet over time, when there is nothing to gain, when you are not performing, when the door is shut and it is only the two of you. That is what the secret place is for. It is not a study, it is a meeting. And this is why Bounds spent his life fighting one particular lie, because it is the lie that keeps the whole disease in place. The lie is that prayer is a technique. We treat it like a formula, like a machine you feed the right words into to get the right result out of, a spiritual transaction where we place the order and wait for delivery. Bounds taught something that cuts that lie in half. He taught that God's method has never once been a program, a plan, or a system. God's method from the beginning has always been a man. While the world searches endlessly for better machinery, heaven has only ever been searching for better men, and prayer is the furnace where those men are forged. Prayer, in his teaching, is not mainly something you do. It is something that is done to you. It is not the craftsman using a tool. It is the raw metal being heated and hammered and poured into a vessel that God can finally trust to carry something heavy. The praying makes the man, and the man makes everything else. You cannot separate the two, no matter how hard you try. A shallow man cannot pray deep prayers, and a man who prays deep will not stay shallow for very long. Change the man in secret, and you have changed everything he touches in the light. And this is why the morning matters so much, and why Bounds returned to it again and again, like a man returning to a well he had personally drawn life from. There is something about giving God the very first hour, before the world has spoken a single word into your soul, before the noise has started and the demands have lined up outside your door, before your phone has told you what to fear and what to want today. When you meet God at the start, you meet him with a clean mind and an undivided heart, with the first fruits of your strength instead of the exhausted scraps at the end. The man who always waits until night to pray is offering God the leftovers of a soul the world has already picked clean. But the man who is early on his knees is saying, with his whole body, "Before I belong to anything else today, before I answer to a single other voice, I belong to you." That is not a schedule, that is a surrender. And God has answered that particular kind of surrender all through history with a kind of power that the late and the casual and the leftover givers simply never taste. Now I already hear the objections rising up in you, because they rise up in everyone, so let us take them out into the light one at a time. You say you have no time, but you have time for the things you truly believe you cannot live without. And the real confession hidden inside, I have no time, is I have not yet decided this matters more than sleep, more than scrolling, more than the 100 small comforts I reach for without thinking. It is never actually about the minutes. It is about the throne of your priorities, and prayer will always cost you something that currently sits higher on it. You say you have no discipline, that you are just not that kind of person. But you are disciplined about everything you love. No one has to force you to do the things you truly want. The problem was never your willpower. The problem is that you have not yet wanted God more than you want the ease of not seeking Him, and that wanting itself is the first thing the secret place will begin to grow in you. And you say the hardest one of all, I tried and I did not feel anything. I knelt down and my mind wandered and God felt 1,000 miles away and nothing happened. So I stopped. And I want you to hear this next part more clearly than anything else in this whole message. The dryness is not the sign that you are failing. The dryness is the price, arriving right on schedule. You will go into the secret place expecting to feel something, and very often, especially at the start, you will feel nothing at all. You will kneel in the dark, and your mind will drift to your bills, your worries, the argument you had yesterday, the list of things you have to do. You will wonder if God is even in the room. You will get up feeling like you wasted 20 minutes, and standing right there beside you will be the voice of the enemy of your soul, ready and waiting, whispering that this is pointless, that it is not working, that you are simply not the kind of person who prays, that holier people feel things and you do not, so why keep embarrassing yourself in an empty room? And most people believe that voice. They give it 3 days or 3 weeks, and when the fireworks never come, they quietly conclude the secret place must be for other people, and they walk away from the single most powerful thing they could ever have built in this life. But listen to me. Faithfulness in the dark, when you feel nothing and see nothing and receive nothing you can measure or show anyone, is the exact thing God is watching for. Because a man who will keep seeking Him when it is dry is a man who wants God, and not merely the feelings God can give. The dryness is the sieve. It separates the seekers from the tourists. Keep going through it. Keep showing up to the empty room. And one day you will find that the well was there the entire time. It was simply deeper than the quitters were ever willing to dig. And understand who is fighting to keep you out of that room, because this is not a neutral struggle, and it never was. There is an enemy, and he's not particularly afraid of a busy Christian. He is not threatened by your activity, your opinions, your church attendance, or your ability to talk fluently about faith. He will happily let you do all of that until the day you die. What he cannot afford, what he will do anything to prevent, is for you to actually get alone with God and stay there. So he does not usually attack the secret place head-on. He is far too clever for that. Instead, he crowds it out. He fills your hours, floods your attention, keeps you tired and distracted and endlessly reasonably busy, so that the door to the secret place is never quite shut and the appointment is always postponed until tomorrow. He would rather you do 100 good things than the one hidden thing that would change you at the root. Every morning you choose the room over the noise. You are not just building a habit, you are winning a war he has been quietly waging for your whole life. And when a man keeps going, when he pays the price almost no one is willing to pay, something begins to happen that everyone around him can see, even though he never once shows them the secret behind it. He begins to carry weight. There is a presence to him now, a settledness, an authority he is not performing and could not fake if he tried. When he speaks, It lands somewhere deeper than his words. When he prays, things move. When he walks into a hard room, the temperature of it changes. People cannot explain it, and honestly, neither can he, because the source of it is hidden from everyone, including himself. That weight is not talent, and it never was. It is the overflow of 1,000 unseen mornings. It is God being finally able to trust a man with real power, because that man proved, in the one place where the two could be told apart, that he wanted the giver more than the gift. This is the great reversal at the very heart of everything. The most public power always flows from the most private life. The seen authority is born entirely in the unseen hours. You cannot get the fruit without the root, and the root grows only in the dark, in the quiet, in the secret, where no one is watching it grow. And do not let your mind slip away by telling you that all of this is meant for other people. That is the oldest trick there is. You hear about the men who did the most for God, and something in you quietly files this whole message away as a word for pastors, for missionaries, for the great and the gifted and the specially called, for anyone at all but you. But the secret place was never reserved for the famous. It has no entry requirements. It asks for no title, no platform, no seminary degree, no special anointing you have to earn before you are allowed in. It is open to the tired father who works 2 jobs and comes home with nothing left. It is open to the single mother who has 10 quiet minutes only after the children are finally asleep. It is open to the teenager, to the widow, to the man who has failed at this 100 times, to the woman who is privately certain she is too far gone. God has never once been impressed by the gifted man who will not pray, and he has never once overlooked the ordinary man who does. The whole long pattern of Scripture is God reaching straight past the impressive and laying his hand on some unremarkable, unnoticed, easily forgotten person who simply learned to seek him in secret, and making of them something the watching world could not explain. You do not have to be special to enter that room. You only have to go in, and the going in, again and again, is the very thing that makes you into whatever God intended you to be. And what the secret place grows in an ordinary life is not only power for great tasks, it is a different kind of person for ordinary days, because it does not only change what you are able to do, it changes who you are when no one important is watching at all. The man who meets God in the dark begins slowly, almost without noticing, to become patient with the very people who used to exhaust him. He begins to carry a stillness inside that the chaos of the day can no longer reach all the way down into. His anger loses its hair trigger, his fear loses its grip on his throat. He starts to bring a quiet home with him that his family can feel the moment he walks through the door. A peace he is not manufacturing on the spot because it was poured into him hours earlier in a room they never saw. The fruit of the secret place does not only show up in a pulpit or a great moment. It shows up in the kitchen, in the marriage, in the way you answer your child on the hardest evening of the week, in the way you hold your temper and your tongue and your worry when everything in you wants to let them all go. And this is how you will actually know it is working, long before you ever feel anything dramatic, not by fireworks, by the slow, undeniable softening of a heart that has been quietly spending its mornings with God. The people who live with you will notice it before you ever do, which means the reverse is just as true, and it is a warning you cannot afford to wave away. A prayerless life, no matter how busy it looks, no matter how successful, no matter how impressive from the outside, is a bankrupt life at the center. You can build an entire ministry and never once have met God alone. You can lead thousands of people to a God you yourself barely know in secret. You can have every gift, every open door, every platform, every word of praise, and be, in the only place that finally matters, completely empty-handed. The crowds will not know. The people who admire you will not know. For a long time you may not even know it yourself, but you will feel the hollowness in the quiet moments, in the drive home, in the dark before sleep. That gnawing sense that you are running on the fading memory of a fire you stopped tending years ago. Because activity is not intimacy. Serving him is not the same as knowing him. And a man can spend his entire life doing great things for God and never once spend a single quiet hour simply being with God, and arrive at the end of it all with his hands completely full and his heart completely starved. So here is the call, and it is for you tonight, exactly where you are sitting right now. Do not wait until you feel ready, because that day is never coming. Do not wait until your life gets calmer, because it does not get calmer, it only gets louder. Build the secret place now, tonight. It does not have to be grand or perfect or impressive. It can be a single chair in a corner of a room. It can be a closet, an actual closet, a small dark space with a door that shuts. It can be the front seat of your car in the driveway for 10 minutes before you walk into the house. It can be your kitchen at 5 in the morning while the entire world still sleeps, where does not matter at all. What matters is that it is yours, that it is regular, that it is secret, and that you go there to meet God and nothing and no one else. Start so small that you cannot possibly fail. 10 honest minutes on your knees is worth more than the perfect hour you only ever plan and never pray. And then go back tomorrow and the day after that. And on the day it feels dry and dead and pointless, go back anyway, because that is the day it counts the most. Pay the price almost no one is willing to pay, and you will receive the thing almost no one ever has. Because the truth underneath all of this, the truth that should break something open in you tonight, is that the door was never locked. It never was. The secret place has stood open this entire time, waiting, and the Father who sees in secret has been in that room the whole while you were too busy, too tired, too distracted, and too afraid to walk in. He is not standing there waiting to scold you for how long you took. He is waiting the way a father waits at a window for a child to finally come home. All the noise of your life, all the striving and the streaming and the endless motion and the desperate reaching for something to fill the ache has only ever been the long and painful way around to the one simple thing your soul was actually made for, which is to be alone with the God who made it and knows it and loves it and has been longing this whole time to meet you in the one place where no one else will ever see. So tonight, shut the door, get down on your knees. Say his name out loud into the dark and discover the way every single man who ever did the most for God discovered before you, that the most important thing you will ever build in your entire life is the room that no one else will ever see.